The first thing my son said when I asked about the $5,800 charge in Dubai was not, "I'm sorry." It was, "Dad, don't report it. You'll embarrass us." I was sitting upright in a hospital bed at 6:17 on a Wednesday morning, wearing a paper gown and two plastic identification bands, while a nurse shaved a strip of gray hair from my chest in preparation for bypass surgery. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and burnt coffee. Rain ticked against the dark window. On the tray beside me sat a cup of ice chips I was not allowed to drink and the small leather wallet my late wife, Ellen, had given me on our 40th anniversary. My phone had vibrated beneath that wallet. The alert on the screen read, Saffron Crown Resort, Dubai, $5,800. For a few seconds I wondered whether the medication had made me misread it. Then I opened the banking app and saw the charge again. It was pending on my personal travel card, the one I kept locked unless I was actually taking a trip. I had not been outside Kentucky in 11 months. I had not been outside St. Matthew's Medical Center in 2 days. I called the number beneath my son's name. Colin answered on the 5th ring. Music and voices floated behind him. Someone laughed. I heard glasses touch. "Dad, it's after 2 in the afternoon here. Are you okay? There is a $5,800 charge from a resort in Dubai on my card." The laughter behind him stopped, or perhaps he had stepped away from it. "Don't report it," he said quickly. "It's us." "Who is us?" There was a pause long enough for me to hear water splashing somewhere near him. Serena and me. Her parents. Trent. The kids. "The villa deposit got held up, and your card was still in my wallet from that Cincinnati rental last year. I'll pay it back when we get home. You charged my card without asking while I am in the hospital. I was going to tell you." "When?" He lowered his voice. "Dad, please. Howard has business people with him. If the hotel had declined us at the desk, it would have looked terrible. You're not using the card while you're in the hospital." I made a judgment call. I looked at the nurse. Her name was Renee Wallace, according to the badge clipped above her navy scrub pocket. She had stopped adjusting the blood pressure cuff and was looking at the floor, trying to give me privacy in a room too small to contain any. "Your judgment," I said, "was that my money mattered less than your embarrassment. It's one charge. Don't turn it into a trial. I am having my chest opened in 2 hours." Another pause. "I know." Serena and I sent flowers. I had seen the flowers the evening before. White lilies in a square glass vase with a printed card that said, "Get well soon, Martin." It did not say Dad. The florist had spelled my last name wrong on the delivery slip. "Are you coming home?" I asked. "The return tickets are non-refundable, and Dr. Patel said your prognosis was good. Besides, the family has been planning this for 8 months. The family. He meant his wife's family. I was the man in the hospital whose credit card kept their reservation from becoming awkward. Then he said the sentence I remembered long after the incision healed. "Just let me keep things smooth here. You can't do anything about it from a hospital bed anyway." Renee's eyes lifted. Mine stayed on the rain. "I have to go," I said. "Wait. There may be an email from Blue River Title. It's routine. If they call, tell them I'm handling things until you recover." "What things?" "Company paperwork. Nothing you need to worry about before surgery." The line went quiet before I could ask another question. Renee removed the cuff and wrote down my blood pressure. "Would you like me to ask your doctor for a few minutes before they take you down? Is it that bad?" "Your blood pressure went up. The number isn't what concerns me." She glanced at the phone in my hand. "You look like a man who just heard 2 different alarms." That was exactly how it felt. The $5,800 charge was insulting, but it was also simple. A stolen card number could be canceled. Money could be disputed. The reference to Blue River Title was different. Hail Flow Controls did not have any active real estate transaction with Blue River Title, at least none that I had approved. I had founded the company 38 years earlier in the back half of a rented machine shop with 2 employees, a used lathe, and a folding desk that leaned left whenever I put a ledger on it. We built pressure monitoring assemblies and specialized valve controls used in hospitals, water systems, and industrial plants. We were not glamorous, but our products did what they were supposed to do. By the time I was 72, we employed 38 people and owned an 11-acre property outside Louisville, with 2 buildings, a testing lab, and room for a third. I still held 56% of the voting shares. Colin held 24%. An employee trust held the remaining 20%. The land did not belong to Hail Flow Controls at all. Ellen and I had placed it in a separate company called ME Properties, our initials, Martin and Ellen, and leased it to the operating business. We had done that on the advice of our attorney after a customer's insurer tried to drag our property into a lawsuit 20 years earlier. Colin knew all of that. He had been operations director for 7 years. Blue River Title handled commercial closings. I called our controller, Elaine Porter. It went to voicemail. At 6:23 in the morning, that was reasonable. I left no message. Instead, I opened my email and searched the words Blue River. There was nothing. Then an orderly arrived to take me for another scan, and the machinery of the hospital began moving me toward an operating room, whether my family was ready or not. Dr. Samir Patel came in shortly before 7. He was younger than Colin and spoke in the careful, unhurried voice of a man who knew panic could be contagious. He reviewed the procedure again. 3 blocked arteries. A bypass was not optional. My collapse in the company parking lot on Monday had been a warning generous enough to leave me alive. Your son is still listed as your medical contact, he said. Do you want us to update him when the procedure is complete? I looked at the emergency contact form clipped to his tablet. Colin's number appeared beside the word son. Yes, I said. Then I added, but no one is to ask him to approve financial or business documents for me. Medical information only. Dr. Patel studied my face for a moment. We can note that. Do you have a healthcare directive? My attorney has it. Colin can make medical decisions if I cannot, but he has no general power of attorney. Understood. Renee was standing near the door. I asked if she could place my wallet and phone in the hospital safe rather than release them to anyone. Of course, she said. I wrote the passcode to the phone in a sealed property envelope, then crossed it out and asked for a new envelope. The second time, I did not write the passcode at all. The last clear image I had before anesthesia was the round operating room light above me. It reminded me of the inspection lamps in our old testing lab. Ellen used to tease me that I trusted any room more if I could see its wiring. Count backward from 10, the anesthesiologist said. I made it to 7. When I woke, it was Thursday afternoon. There was pressure in my chest, a tube in my throat, and a confusion so thick I could not tell whether Ellen was dead or simply waiting in the hall. I remember trying to ask for her. I remember a hand squeezing mine and Renee saying, "You're safe, Mr. Hale." Surgery went well. The next 24 hours arrived in pieces. A clock, a sponge on my lips, Dr. Patel's voice, pain when I coughed. A photograph of Colin, Serena, and her family on a white yacht appearing on the muted television because someone had mirrored a phone to the wrong screen in the visitor's lounge. That last part may have been a medication dream. For a while I could not be sure. By Friday morning, I could sit in a chair. My chest felt as if a heavy door had been bolted to it. Renee brought my phone from the safe after confirming my identity twice. There were 27 messages. The first 6 were from employees. Elaine had written that the shop was stable and I should concentrate on recovering. My neighbor, Cal, offered to water the tomato plants Ellen had taught me to grow. My granddaughter Claire had sent a red heart from Dubai and the words, "I love you, Grandpa." I stared at that message longer than the others. Colin had sent 3. Surgery went fine according to Patel. Rest. Please do not dispute the hotel charge yet. It will create a scene. Forward anything you receive from Blue River to me. Time sensitive. There was also an email from a courier service saying a package requiring my signature would be delivered to the hospital that afternoon. I called the card issuer before I called anyone else. The fraud specialist introduced herself as Maribel and asked whether the card was in my possession. It is in a hospital safe in Louisville, I said. The person who made the charge is in Dubai. She placed a temporary lock on the account and reviewed the transaction. The $5,800 had been charged through a mobile wallet token connected to a phone ending in 4419. The token had been created 4 months earlier. Can you tell me the device owner? I asked. I cannot see a name. Do you recognize those digits? I did. Colin's number ended in 4419. 4 months earlier, he had driven me to Cincinnati for a supplier meeting after I bruised my wrist. At the rental counter, my card would not read in the machine. Colin had said, "Let me add it to my wallet just for this. We'll remove it after." I had watched him tap his phone and pay for the car. I had forgotten about it. He had not. Maribel asked whether I wanted to report the transaction as unauthorized. Yes. The cardholder may be contacted. If the other person had prior permission to use the digital card, the investigation can take time. He had permission for 1 car rental in Ohio, not a resort villa in Dubai. She noted my statement and said a replacement card would be mailed to my home. Then she hesitated. "Mr. Hale, there were 2 smaller attempts after the resort charge. one for $91.26 at a document center in the same hotel, another for $1 from a verification service. Both were declined after the lock. What verification service? The descriptor says Sign Verify Global. The second alarm grew louder. I thanked her, ended the call, and dialed Elaine again. She answered immediately. Martin, you should not be making business calls. Good morning to you too. How is your chest? Attached. What is Blue River Title doing with our name? Silence. Elaine and I had worked together for 26 years. She was 61, practical, and incapable of wasting silence. If she paused, it meant she was deciding how much truth another person could bear. Colin told me not to bother you, she said. That was not an answer. On Tuesday, he requested copies of the property survey, environmental report, current cap table, equipment liens, and our key man insurance policy. He said you had authorized preliminary due diligence for a strategic partnership. I authorized no such thing. That is what I believed. Why didn't you tell me? You were in cardiac intensive care. I refused the property files and gave him only public product information. Yesterday, he had our network administrator reset his permissions so he could access the transaction archive. Did he have authority to do that? As operations director, he had authority to request access for operational reasons, not to sell the company. Has he said the word sale? Not to me, but Blue River sent an escrow questionnaire to the general accounting inbox. The subject line was, Hail Flow/Crescent Meridian Proposed Asset Acquisition. Colin deleted it 11 minutes later. You saw it? The accounting inbox archives automatically. He seems to have forgotten that. I closed my eyes. A new incision hurt even when the truth was expected. Elaine, copy the message and every attachment to an external folder that Colin cannot alter. Do not send them to my hospital email yet. Preserve the original metadata. Then call Ruth Calder. I already did. That was why I trusted her. Ruth Calder had been our attorney since before Colin learned to drive. She was 68, wore silver-rimmed glasses, and treated drama the way a good mechanic treated smoke. Evidence of a problem, not the problem itself. She can be at the hospital at 4, Elaine said. Martin, there is something else. Go on. A staff memorandum went out yesterday under your name. It says that because of your unexpected cognitive event, Colin has assumed full executive authority until further notice. I looked down at my hands. One was bruised from an IVE. The other held the phone steadily. Did anyone believe I wrote it? Some did. Most were afraid to ask. Send a correction saying I am recovering from coronary bypass surgery and no permanent change in authority has been approved. Keep it factual. Colin may countermand it. Then let him do it in writing. After the call, I sat without moving until Renee came in with medication. She saw the expression on my face and checked the monitor. Your heart rate is up again. My son told my employees I had a cognitive event. Did you? 3 blocked arteries, no stroke, no cognitive event. She handed me a paper cup. Then you know what you know. Take these before you decide what to do with it. I swallowed the pills. Do you remember the phone call Wednesday morning? I asked. I remember you making it. Would the hospital records show when I went under anesthesia? Yes. Every medication and procedure time is charted. And if someone claimed I signed something during surgery? Her face became still. You should ask medical records for a certified timeline. And you should tell your attorney exactly why. At 1:30, a courier arrived carrying a flat envelope from Calder and Moss, though Ruth's firm had not sent it. The sender line read, C. Hale, acting president. I asked Renee and another nurse to remain in the room while I opened it. Inside were 7 pages and a yellow sticky note in Colin's handwriting. Dad. Routine continuity paperwork because of the surgery. Sign flags only. This keeps payroll and vendor accounts moving. Don't let lawyers make it complicated. The first page was titled Temporary Executive Authorization. It permitted Colin to sign routine purchase orders and payroll files for 30 days. The second page extended that authority to all banking, financing, disposition, merger, acquisition, real property, and shareholder matters. The third page said, I acknowledge that medical circumstances might impair my ability to participate in decisions and that Colin could rely on his own judgment as to my capacity. The signature flags were placed only on pages 1, 5, and 7. If I had followed them without reading, I would have signed the package as a whole. The last document authorized Blue River Title to accept Colin's instructions on behalf of ME Properties. I photographed each page, placed them back in the envelope, and wrote refused across the courier receipt. The courier looked uncomfortable. They told me you were expecting this. They were mistaken. At 2:12, Colin called. Why did you refuse the package? He asked. He did not ask how I felt. Because it was not routine. Payroll could be delayed. Elaine can release payroll. She has done it for 20 years. This is exactly the problem. You don't understand how exposed we are while you're down. Then explain Blue River title. The silence this time was shorter. It is a preliminary conversation. No obligation. Howard introduced us to an investment group here. They want a foothold in the American infrastructure market. The valuation is better than anything we would get at home. You are discussing the sale of my company from a resort in Dubai while I recover from heart surgery. Our company. Then why didn't you tell the other shareholders? Because you say no before you hear anything new. You have been talking about succession for 5 years and doing nothing. I had to create an option. Does your option include the land? He exhaled. The business is worth more with the property. The business does not own the property. That structure is paperwork. You own both. Ellen and I created that structure for a reason. Mom is gone, Dad. 4 words. Quietly spoken, more damaging than shouting. I looked at the empty chair beside the window, and for one disorienting moment I saw Ellen sitting there with her reading glasses low on her nose. Then the chair was only vinyl and steel again. Yes, I said, she is. Her judgment did not die with her. I'm not fighting with you before your medication. Sign the temporary authority. We can talk when I get back. I will not sign it. Then don't blame me if the deal moves without you. A deal involving my shares and my land cannot move without me. His answer came with a calmness that frightened me more than anger would have. We'll see what the doctors say you can manage. He ended the call. At 4, Ruth Calder walked into my room carrying a canvas briefcase and a paper bag from the deli across from the courthouse. She set down the bag, kissed my forehead the way Ellen's older sister used to, and said, "You look terrible. They cut me open yesterday." That explains some of it. She sat, read every page from the courier envelope, and took photographs of the signature flags. "Did you sign anything at all this week?" she asked. "A hospital consent Monday night and an insurance form Tuesday morning. Nothing for the company." "Did Colin have access to a scan of your signature?" "Every officer does. It is on old annual reports, bank letters, vendor certifications." "Does he have your passport image?" I remembered the trip to Canada 3 years earlier. Colin had booked the tickets and asked me to text him a photograph of my passport page. "Probably." Ruth took off her glasses. "Then we assume he can imitate authorization until evidence shows otherwise. First, you need an independent capacity evaluation. Not because I doubt you, but because he has already introduced the subject. Second, we notify every relevant institution that you have granted no transactional authority. Third, we preserve records before anyone cleans them up. Can we stop the sale? If the facts are as you describe, yes. The more important question is what your son has already represented to other people." I told her about the card, the resort, the document center, and Sign Verify Global. I told her about Colin's phrase, "We'll see what the doctors say." Ruth wrote it down word for word. "Do not call him again," she said. "If he calls, you may answer, but do not argue facts or accuse him of a crime. Let him explain. People often become very informative when they believe they are still in control." That sounds like something Ellen would say. Ellen said it to me first. She opened the deli bag and handed me a container of chicken broth that the nurses would not let me eat until it cooled. Then she drafted 4 notices from her laptop. 1 went to Blue River Title, 1 to our bank, 1 to Hailflow's board, 1 to the registered agent for ME Properties. Each said that I remained competent, had authorized no sale or transfer, and required independent confirmation before any document bearing my name could be accepted. At 5:30, Dr. Patel arranged for a neuropsychologist unconnected to my company or family to examine me the next morning. At 6, Elaine sent Ruth the archived Blue River email through a secure link. The attachments changed the shape of the problem. There was a 12-page letter of intent between Hailflow Controls and Crescent Meridian Infrastructure, a Dubai investment firm. It valued our operating assets at $14.2 million and described Colin as controlling executive and authorized representative of all voting interests. It included the 11-acre property as part of the transaction. A schedule showed a $920,000 origination and regional advisory fee payable at closing to Langford Meridian Consulting. Howard Langford, Serena's father, had formed that company 6 weeks earlier. My name appeared at the bottom of the letter of intent. Above it was a signature that looked like mine. The electronic timestamp was Wednesday at 10:14 a.m. Louisville time. At 10:14 Wednesday morning, my chest had been open under an operating room light. I had been connected to a heart-lung machine and incapable of signing my own name, much less selling a company. Ruth looked at the hospital monitor, then at me. That, she said quietly, is why we preserve everything. The signature did not prove Colin had created it. It proved someone had placed my name on a document while I was unconscious. Ruth was careful about that distinction. Suspicion is not evidence, she said, even when suspicion is wearing a name tag. She downloaded the electronic audit page attached to the letter of intent. It listed the signing location only as an internet address. Ruth sent it to an outside forensic consultant her firm used in commercial disputes. Then she asked Elaine to locate the original file without opening or modifying it. At 7:11 that evening, Claire sent me a photograph. She was 16, old enough to notice adults lying and still young enough to believe the truth should make them stop. In the picture, she stood in a blue dress beside Colin and Serena at a long dining table on a terrace. Dubai's towers glittered beyond them. Howard and Denise Langford sat beneath a gold sign bearing the words Crescent Meridian Private Dinner. Trent raised a glass toward the camera. On the table in front of my son lay a dark red presentation folder. A card propped against it read Colin Hale, Chief Executive, Hale Flow Controls. Colin had never been Chief Executive. I was Chairman and Chief Executive. Colin was Operations Director. Claire's message beneath the photo said, "Grandpa, were you supposed to be here? Dad told everyone your doctor would not let you travel. Mr. Howard said the dinner was celebrating your retirement. I didn't know you retired." I typed 3 different responses and erased them. Finally, I wrote, "I have not retired, sweetheart. You have done nothing wrong. Please do not argue with anyone or search through their things. Stay safe and call me if you need me." 3 dots appeared, vanished, and appeared again. "Mom said I shouldn't bother you because you are confused after surgery." I looked at Ruth. "They told my granddaughter I'm confused." "Answer simply," she said. "Do not recruit her into this." I wrote, "I am tired and sore, but I understand what is happening. I love you. We will talk when you are home." Claire responded with another red heart. Then she sent a second photograph. It showed the dinner menu. At the bottom, beneath 6 courses, someone had printed, "Hosted by the Hale Langford family in celebration of a new global partnership." There were 7 people in the photograph, and at least 12 place settings. The $5,800 had not saved a family vacation at a hotel desk. It had paid for the villa, the meeting room, or the dinner where my son introduced his wife's relatives as partners in a company they did not own. The next morning, Dr. Miriam Cole spent 90 minutes testing my memory, reasoning, attention, language, and judgment. She asked me to remember 5 words, draw a clock, explain the difference between a promise and a contract, and calculate how much change I should receive from $20 after buying 2 items. She asked what I would do if I smelled smoke in a crowded theater and why a person might refuse a profitable transaction. "Because price is not the only term," I said, "and because something called profitable can still transfer risk unfairly." She smiled slightly. "That answer sounds occupational. I have spent 38 years reading what people put after the number." Her preliminary conclusion was that I showed no evidence of cognitive impairment. I was fatigued, medicated, and recovering from major surgery, but I understood my medical and financial circumstances and could make decisions. She dictated the result before leaving so it could be placed in my chart that day. Ruth obtained the certified anesthesia timeline. It showed that I had received induction medication at 8:07 Wednesday morning, entered cardiopulmonary bypass at 9:36, and remained under continuous anesthesia until 2:18 that afternoon. The false signature had been applied at 10:14. By noon, the forensic consultant had traced the signing internet address to the guest network of the Saffron Crown Resort in Dubai. The device profile identified a current model tablet running a browser configured in Serena's preferred language and time zone. That did not prove she had clicked the final button, but it put the act inside the resort where my family was staying. The audit page also showed that the verification fee had initially been routed to my locked card. That explained the $1 attempt Maribel had seen. Ruth called Blue River Title on speakerphone. The senior escrow officer, Janet Lowe, sounded alarmed before Ruth finished the first paragraph. "We have not accepted any executed conveyance," Janet said. "We received a preliminary package from Mr. Colin Hale's counsel and an instruction to prepare for closing next Friday. There is no deed in escrow." "What counsel?" Ruth asked. Janet gave the name of a small firm in Lexington, Wilkes and Barr. I knew one of its partners by reputation. He handled commercial development, not criminal schemes, and I doubted he had been told the whole truth. "Did your office receive funds?" Ruth asked. "A $300,000 good faith deposit from Crescent Meridian." It remains in escrow. We were waiting on title confirmation and shareholder resolutions. Do not release it. We will freeze activity pending verification. Ms. Calder, I need to tell you that the package includes a physician letter saying Mr. Hale suffered an acute neurological event. I leaned toward the phone. Who signed it? Janet read the name. Dr. Philip Langford. Howard's younger brother was a concierge physician in Scottsdale. He had never examined me. We had met once at Colin and Serena's wedding, where he spent 10 minutes explaining why my choice of whiskey caused inflammation. Ruth asked Janet to preserve the letter and its transmission record. After the call, I laughed once. It hurt my chest enough to stop me. They used Serena's uncle. He may have been given false information, Ruth said. You keep offering people exits. I keep separating what we know from what anger wants to add. That is how we make sure the right people need exits. Blue River sent the physician letter within the hour. It did not directly declare me incompetent. It said, based on information supplied by my immediate family, I had experienced acute confusion, impaired recall, and probable post-cardiac neurological compromise, and recommended that business decisions be deferred to my designated successor. The wording was slippery. Dr. Langford had protected himself by saying he relied on family reports. Colin had protected himself by implying the doctor had made a diagnosis. But the letter was dated Tuesday, before my surgery and before any post-operative confusion could have occurred. The plan had not begun with my anesthesia. It had been waiting for it. On Saturday, I walked 40 steps down the hospital corridor with a therapist holding a belt around my waist. Each step pulled at my chest. I passed a family waiting room where 3 generations sat around a vending machine. A little boy slept with his head on his grandfather's leg. The grandfather kept one hand on the boy's shoulder and one hand over his own eyes. I had spent most of Colin's life believing provision was a language that did not need translation. I paid the school bill on time. I attended games even when a customer threatened to leave. I taught him to use a drill press, drive a stick shift, and read a balance sheet. When he married Serena, Ellen and I gave them the down payment on a house. When Claire was born early, I slept in a chair outside neonatal intensive care while Colin paced. When Howard's development business failed during the recession, I introduced him to 2 lenders and never told Colin that Howard had asked me to guarantee a loan. I had said no to the guarantee but helped him sell a parcel before foreclosure. I thought those acts said, "You are loved." Somewhere along the way, Colin heard, "You will always absorb the cost." That afternoon, he called again. "Blue River froze the closing," he said without greeting. "Did you do that?" I notified them that I had not authorized a sale. "You have just humiliated me in front of an international buyer. You charged my card to entertain that buyer while I was hospitalized. The card is not the issue. No. It is the receipt." He went quiet. "What does that mean?" "It means a small act of entitlement showed me where to look for a larger one. Howard arranged an opportunity worth $14 million. Do you understand that number? Better than you do. The letter is for an asset acquisition. After debt, taxes, transaction costs, the employee trust obligation, and the Langford fee, the number you keep repeating is not what shareholders receive." He had not expected me to see the letter. "How did you get that?" "You sent it through our accounting system. Elaine had no authority to give you confidential transaction material while you're medically compromised. It is my company's material." "For now," he said. I let the words sit between us. "Colin, who placed my signature on the letter at 10:14 Wednesday morning?" For the first time, his breathing changed. "You authorized me verbally before surgery." "That was not my question. The signature page was administrative. You agreed to explore succession months ago." "Who placed my signature on it?" "I'm not doing an interrogation over the phone. Neither am I. I am asking my son one question." Serena handled the document service. She believed I had authority. If there was a technical error, we can replace the page when we get back. There it was. Not a confession, but an explanation offered before I had mentioned Dubai, the device, or the verification service. "You told her you had authority?" "I did have authority." "Not from me." His voice sharpened. "You have promised me this company my entire adult life. Every weekend, every late flight, every customer emergency. I gave it to Hailflow because you said I was building something that would be mine. Then every time I try to lead, you hide behind another rule Ellen wrote 20 years ago." The accusation landed because part of it was true. Colin had worked hard. He had modernized our inventory system, won 2 national accounts, and carried the company through the month after Ellen died, when I could barely decide what to eat. I had spoken loosely about your company someday. I had postponed a formal succession plan because each year seemed to bring one more decision we should make first. I should have defined the path more clearly, I said. That was my failure. It did not give you permission to forge the destination. You always have a line like that. Come home. We will meet with the board and talk with documents on the table. We fly Monday. Then Monday. Tell Blue River to unfreeze the deposit. No. Crescent can sue us. They can explain who told them you controlled shares you did not control. He hung up. On Sunday morning, Claire called by video from a hallway in the resort. She whispered as if she were reporting from a library. Grandpa, Dad and Mom are fighting. You do not need to tell me what they say. I know. I just wanted to see if you really look okay. I turned the phone so she could see the chair, the walking frame, and the row of cards taped to the wall. I looked like a 72-year-old man who lost an argument with a surgeon. She smiled, then covered her mouth because she was afraid someone would hear. Are you mad at me for sending the pictures? No, but I do not want you taking any more. You are not responsible for protecting adults from their own choices. Dad said you were giving him the company and then changed your mind because of medicine. Your father and I disagree about what I promised. Medicine did not make the disagreement. She looked down. Grandpa, did you pay for this trip? I could have protected Colin in that moment. I could have said it was complicated. For years, adults in our family used that word to cover any truth a child was old enough to notice but too young to control. I paid for one charge without agreeing to it, I said. The bank is handling it. The rest is between your parents and me. Mom told Grandma, Denise, you always pay after you calm down. That sentence was more useful than the photographs, though I never used Claire as a witness. It told me how the family had come to understand my anger, whether that delayed reimbursement. I am not asking you to take sides, I said. When you come home, Aunt Maya will pick you up at the airport if you would like. Maya was Ellen's niece and Claire's godmother. She lived 20 minutes from us and had stayed out of company matters. Can she? Claire asked quickly. Yes. Thank you. After we ended the call, I asked Ruth to make sure Maya could legally pick Claire up if Colin and Serena objected. Ruth reminded me that Claire's parents controlled that decision. We could offer, not interfere. Boundaries apply in both directions, she said. I did not enjoy hearing it, which was how I knew it was useful. I was discharged Monday afternoon, 3 hours before Colin's flight landed. Renee wheeled me to the entrance even though I insisted I could walk. You can walk, she said. You can also arrive home without proving it to the pavement. Ruth drove my car. We stopped at the pharmacy, then at the company. Not to go inside, but to retrieve a sealed box Elaine carried out to us. It contained printed bank records, archived emails, board minutes, and a copy of the server access log. Elaine leaned through the passenger window. Her gray blonde hair was pinned up with a pencil, as it had been every month end since 1999. Colin changed the office alarm codes from Dubai, she said. I still have access, but Thomas Reed does not. Thomas was our plant manager. Why lock out Thomas? Thomas objected to a vendor list Colin circulated. 3 companies on it have no manufacturing history. One is Langford Meridian. What were they supposed to supply? Strategic services. $240,000 over 12 months. Has any money been paid? $40,000 last month, described as a market entry retainer. Colin approved it below the board threshold. I felt the scar tighten as I breathed. Preserve it. Do not confront him. Elaine nodded. The staff is asking whether you are coming back. Tell them I am recovering and the company will operate normally. No speeches. They could use a speech. Then tell them payroll is funded and no sale has been approved. That is the speech they need. At home, the kitchen looked almost exactly as it had before the ambulance came. My coffee cup sat upside down in the drying rack. A grocery list in my handwriting lay beside the fruit bowl. Oats, milk, tomatoes, stamps. Ellen's chair remained at the far end of the table, though no one had used it in 5 years. I had replaced the cushion twice to prevent the fabric from fading unevenly, an act so irrational I had never mentioned it to anyone. Ruth put the box of records in the study. She made me promise not to open it until morning. Your job tonight is to breathe, walk to the hallway twice, and not die of stubbornness, she said. Is that legal advice? It is hourly advice, more expensive. At 8:40, headlights swept across the kitchen wall. Colin's rented SUV stopped in my driveway. He had not gone home first. He came through the side door using the code I had not yet changed. Serena followed in a cream-colored travel suit, carrying a leather document case. Howard and Denise waited in the vehicle. I could see their silhouettes through the window. Colin looked tanned and exhausted. For one brief second, when he saw the pillow against my chest and the walker near the table, His face became the face of the boy who had cried after breaking his wrist at 12. "Dad," he said, "you look smaller." Surgery removes confidence before weight. He stepped toward me as if to hug me, then stopped, perhaps afraid of the incision. Serena placed the document case on the table. "We came directly from the airport," she said. "We need to fix the misunderstanding before Crescent withdraws." No one asked whether I needed water. Colin sat across from me. Serena remained standing. "The buyer's board meets tomorrow," he said. "If you confirm the letter of intent, we can restore the timeline. It is non-binding." Someone put my signature on it. Serena folded her arms. "Colin told me you had given verbal approval. The document portal required a signature image to open due diligence. It was not a closing document. So you put it there." I uploaded an existing signature at my husband's direction. Her precision sounded rehearsed. At 10:14, while I was on a heart-lung machine, Colin looked toward the dark window. Serena did not. "The timing was unfortunate," she said. "The timing was evidence." Colin struck the table with the flat of his hand. Not hard, but hard enough to rattle Ellen's sugar bowl. "Stop talking like we are strangers in court. I made a decision for the future of this family. Which family receives the $920,000 advisory fee?" Serena's face changed first. Howard's shadow shifted in the SUV. "You read a draft schedule," Colin said. "That fee compensates Howard for making the introduction and supporting the Middle East transition. With no manufacturing experience, no license, and a company formed 6 weeks ago. That is how advisory work operates. Not in my company." Serena leaned forward. "Your company would not have this valuation without Colin. He has spent years waiting for you to recognize that. My father finally found people who do. Your father also sent a physician letter from his brother saying I had neurological damage." She looked at Colin. That was the first thing she had not prepared for. "What letter?" she asked. Colin's jaw tightened. "It was a contingency note based on what the hospital told me." "The hospital told you I had 3 blocked arteries. Dr. Langford wrote his letter before my surgery. He has never examined me. We were trying to protect the transaction if you were incapacitated. Before you knew whether I was incapacitated. Dad, you collapsed in a parking lot. My heart failed. My mind did not transfer ownership to you on the way down." Serena opened the case and placed a fresh document on the table. "Then prove everyone wrong. Sign a confirmation now, while you are clearly alert. We will amend the language about the land later." I did not touch it. "Leave my house," I said. Colin stared at me. "You don't mean that." "I need rest. Ruth will communicate about the company." "You brought Ruth into this? You brought Blue River, Crescent Meridian, your father-in-law, and a doctor from Arizona into it." He stood so quickly the chair tipped backward. Serena caught it. "If you destroy this deal," he said, "the board will see what you are. An old man using 56% to keep 38 people trapped in his grief. The cruelest accusations borrow enough truth to enter the room." I had delayed succession. I had kept Ellen's chair. I still referred to ME Properties as ours when one of the owners had been dead for 5 years. But grief had not forged a signature. "The board will see the records," I said. "So will you." Serena closed the case. At the door, she turned back. "The resort charge was going to be reimbursed from the advisory fee. No one stole from you. You planned to repay unauthorized personal spending with money taken from a sale I did not approve." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Colin walked out without looking at me. I waited until their vehicle left before I allowed myself to shake. It was not fear exactly. It was the body's delayed admission that love had become evidence. The next morning, I changed the door code. It took me 11 minutes because the keypad was mounted too low and bending pulled at my chest. Cal, my neighbor, stood behind me holding the instruction sheet and pretending not to watch my hands tremble. "Want me to do it?" he asked. "No. That answer cost you 6 minutes. Then I have 5 minutes of ownership left," Cal snorted, but he stayed until the green light blinked. He was a retired high school principal and had known Colin since the boy threw crab apples at his garage. I told him only that family and business had become tangled and that no one was to enter the house without my permission. "Do you want me to ask questions?" he said. "Not yet." "Do you want me not to ask questions loudly?" "That would help." He left soup in my refrigerator and put my trash bin at the curb. Quiet care had a different sound than expensive flowers. It usually sounded like a lid closing or a gate being latched. Ruth arrived at 10 with a portable scanner and a junior attorney named Marcus Bell. Elaine joined by video from a conference room at the company. For 3 hours, we reviewed records from the box. Colin had begun building the transaction in layers small enough to avoid notice. 6 months earlier, He approved a $9,800 regional market study from Langford Meridian, below the $10,000 amount requiring a second officer's signature. The next month came a $9,650 regulatory overview, then $9,900 for partner identification. The invoices used different descriptions but identical formatting. All were approved on Fridays after Elaine's weekly payment report had been prepared. The $40,000 market entry retainer was split into 4 invoices of $10,000, each submitted by a different Langford entity. 2 shared the same mailing address, Howard's home. Structuring, Marcus said, or a remarkable fear of 5-digit numbers. Elaine looked tired on the screen. Our policy says related party payments require board disclosure, regardless of amount. Colin certified there was no relationship. Did Serena own part of Langford Meridian? Ruth asked. The state filing lists Howard alone, but the bank instructions route payments to an account opened by both Howard and Serena. That piece had come from a vendor setup form Serena signed as financial administrator. The records also showed Colin had asked our bank to pre-approve a $2.4 million revolving line of credit. He described it as post-acquisition working capital and offered the equipment and property as collateral. The bank had not completed the application because M.E. Properties was a separate entity, and because my personal guarantee was missing. The temporary authorization in the hospital envelope would have supplied both. So the sale price was not the only objective, I said. Ruth shook her head. The buyer's deposit, the advisory fee, and the new credit line are 3 separate pools of money. We do not know which they intended to access first. Marcus displayed the proposed funds flow statement from Blue River. It directed $920,000 to Langford Meridian at closing. It also assigned a $300,000 transaction stabilization payment to an escrow subaccount controlled by Wilkes and Barr. The description was unusual. Ruth called the attorney whose name appeared on the document, Gerald Wilkes. He answered on speakerphone and became defensive immediately. My clients told me Mr. Hale had approved the transaction and was temporarily unavailable because of illness, he said. Which clients? Ruth asked. Colin Hale and Langford Meridian Consulting. Did you represent Hale Flow Controls? I was told Mr. Colin Hale was authorized to engage us for the transaction. Did you verify that with the company's board or existing counsel? I received an executive authorization and a physician letter. You received a forged signature and a medical opinion from the seller's wife's uncle. There was a long pause. I was not aware of that relationship, Wilkes said. Ruth's voice stayed level. You are aware now. Preserve your file. Do not disperse or destroy anything. My client has not waived privilege with you because he never retained you. I will need to consult ethics counsel. That would be wise. After he ended the call, Ruth looked at me. Another exit. Do you think he will take it? He sounded like a man who just discovered the floor plan has changed. At 1:15, Elaine received an email terminating her employment for unauthorized disclosure of confidential strategic information. Colin had signed it electronically from his home. She read it aloud without emotion. Can he fire her? I asked Ruth. The operations director cannot unilaterally remove the controller under your bylaws. That requires chief executive approval or a board vote. You are still chief executive. I dictated a response, confirming that Elaine remained controller and instructing Colin not to interfere with her access. Ruth added a preservation notice and a warning against retaliation. 5 minutes later, our network administrator called Elaine. Colin had ordered him to delete her account immediately. I took the phone. Jeremy, this is Martin Hale. Mr. Hale, I'm sorry. Colin said you were not available. I am available. Elaine remains employed. Do not delete, alter, or disable any user account or record. Suspend all administrator-level changes until you receive joint written instruction from Elaine and Thomas Reed. Colin is my supervisor, and I am his. I am sending the instruction in writing. If anyone asks you to erase records, call Ruth Calder. Jeremy exhaled. I don't want to be in the middle of this. Then stand beside the records. They do not move. He followed the instruction. Colin called 9 times that afternoon. On the 10th, Ruth said I could answer if I felt strong enough. You rescinded Elaine's termination, he said. You did not have authority to terminate her. She stole confidential documents. She preserved company records. You are letting an employee turn you against your son. You placed her between her duty and your secrecy. Listen to yourself. You have been home less than a day, and Ruth has you talking like a deposition. Ruth did not approve payments to your father-in-law. Those payments generated a $14 million offer. Then why hide the relationship? He did not answer. The board will meet Friday at 10, I said. Independent counsel will attend. You will keep your access until then, but you may not execute contracts, move funds, change permissions, destroy records, or represent that you control the company. You cannot suspend my authority without a board vote. I can limit an officer's authority as chief executive under Section 4.3. You helped revise that section 3 years ago. This is revenge over a credit card charge. No. The charge told me where you were. The documents told me what you were doing. Claire sent you those pictures, didn't she? My grip tightened around the phone. Do not put your daughter in the middle. She violated our privacy. She asked whether her grandfather had retired. I answered her. If you punish her for noticing your lie, that will be another choice you make without my help. Stay away from my child. I will respect your parental authority. You will not use it to rewrite what she saw. He ended the call. That evening, Claire sent no message. I did not contact her. It was one of the hardest decisions of the week. On Wednesday, a home health nurse checked my incision and made me walk to the mailbox. A plain envelope waited inside. It contained a copy of a petition Colin's attorney had drafted for emergency guardianship over my financial affairs. The petition had not yet been filed. Someone had slipped the copy into my mailbox without postage. It alleged that I had become paranoid after surgery, accused family members of theft, refused a beneficial business transaction, and was vulnerable to manipulation by long-standing employees and outside counsel. It listed Serena and Howard as witnesses to my confusion. Attached was Dr. Philip Langford's letter. At the bottom of the final page, beneath a blank filing date, was a proposed order appointing Colin temporary guardian with power over my bank accounts, shares, and real property. I called Ruth. Do not touch the envelope again, she said. Put it in a clean folder. Marcus will collect it. Who sent it? Possibly someone in Colin's lawyer's office who became uncomfortable. Possibly Colin, to frighten you. We will not guess. Can he get this without me being heard? Emergency orders can be entered temporarily in genuine crises, but he would need sworn evidence. We now have an independent capacity examination, your medical records, and proof that his supporting doctor never examined you. If he files, we respond. I sat at the kitchen table with the proposed order 6 feet away. He wants legal authority over me. He wants control over assets. Whether he understands the distinction is something he will have to explain. Ruth arranged for a geriatric psychiatrist to perform a second evaluation at my house. I resented every question. I resented drawing another clock, repeating another string of words, and explaining why I had changed my door code. Then I reminded myself that clear records protect people who do not deserve to be dismissed as confused. The psychiatrist, Dr. Lillian Brooks, concluded that I had full decisional capacity and showed appropriate, evidence-based concern about financial exploitation. Her report used the phrase evidence-based concern. I read it twice. On Thursday, Marcus discovered who had sent the guardianship draft. Gerald Wilkes had mailed it after withdrawing from representation. His cover letter had become separated from the packet inside a damaged outer envelope. He had concluded that Colin and the Langfords might use his work product in a proceeding based on incomplete medical information. He returned the unused retainer and notified the State Bar's ethics hotline. The $300,000 in escrow remained frozen. That same day, Crescent Meridian's general counsel, Nadia Rahman, requested a video meeting. She joined from a spare, white conference room in Dubai at 8 in the evening her time. She was in her late 40s and had the controlled expression of someone who disliked surprises enough to prepare for them professionally. Ruth, Elaine, and I joined from my kitchen. Marcus recorded the call with everyone's consent. Mr. Hale, Nadia began, I want to state first that Crescent Meridian believed it was negotiating with authorized representatives of Hale Flow Controls and all relevant property interests. Who told you that? I asked. Mr. Colin Hale and Mr. Howard Langford. We were provided a capitalization schedule identifying Colin Hale as holder of 56% of voting shares after an effective transfer from you. No such transfer occurred. We understand that now. She displayed the schedule. It showed my shares moving to Colin through a document titled Founder Succession Election dated 6 months earlier. I recognized the title. 3 years ago, Ruth had drafted a succession election allowing me to transfer up to 12% of my shares to Colin over time if performance targets were met. I had never signed or activated it. The draft in Nadia's file had been altered. The phrase, up to 12%, had become all class of voting interests, and a signature image had been inserted. Where did you get that? Ruth asked. It was uploaded to our data room by Langford Meridian. Elaine leaned toward her camera. That draft was stored in the restricted board archive. Colin accessed the archive last Thursday. The altered document predates last Thursday, Nadia said. Our system received it 5 weeks ago. We checked the access log. Colin had opened the board archive 6 weeks earlier at 11:48 p.m. using a remote connection from his home. Nadia continued. Crescent had not intended to close the entire acquisition immediately. The $300,000 deposit purchased 60 days of exclusivity. During that period, Colin planned to borrow against our assets, expand a production line, and restructure ownership. Crescent would then buy the company after certain contracts were transferred. What was the purpose of the $2.4 million credit line, I asked. We were told it would fund the expansion necessary to satisfy our purchase conditions, she said. Did Crescent require the Langford advisory fee? Her expression cooled. No. We were told Haleflow had agreed to compensate its advisor from seller proceeds. The amount was higher than customary. Mr. Howard Langford said it included resolving family ownership issues. Resolving, I repeated. Nadia looked directly into the camera. Mr. Hale, your granddaughter attended one dinner briefly. She appeared uncomfortable when a toast referred to your retirement. I asked Colin whether you were aware of the event. He told me you had experienced a stroke and no longer recognized certain employees. I am sorry to learn that was false. I did not have a stroke. We have suspended all negotiations. We will cooperate with any lawful inquiry and expect return of our escrow deposit. You should receive it, I said. My dispute is not with Crescent. Ruth glanced at me but did not object. Before ending the call, Nadia sent the complete data room activity log and every document her firm had received. She did not do it as a favor. Crescent needed to prove it was a deceived buyer rather than a participant. Motives did not make evidence less useful. The data room showed that Serena had uploaded the false succession election. Her username appeared beside the file. Howard had uploaded the physician letter. Colin had uploaded the asset schedule, insurance records, and a board resolution bearing the signatures of all 3 directors. I was one director. Elaine was another. Neither of us had signed it. The third director, Peter Lawson, was a retired engineer who had invested in Haleflow during our first expansion. He was 76 and lived in North Carolina. His signature was also false. I called him personally. Peter answered with the rough voice of a man who had spent 40 years around machinery. Martin, I was beginning to wonder whether I had died and no one told me. Why? Colin sent a board resignation for me to sign. Said the company needed active directors during your recovery. I told him I would resign after he explained the transaction. He never called back. Did you sign a resolution approving Crescent Meridian? I never heard of Crescent Meridian until Ruth's notice. There is a resolution with your signature. Then there is a resolution with someone's drawing of my signature. Peter agreed to attend Friday's meeting by video and provide a declaration. Before we ended, he said, You remember when Colin was 9 and changed the score on that science fair sheet? I did. He had turned a 78 into a 98 with a blue pen. Ellen noticed because the teacher wrote in black. We made him take it back, I said. He cried for 2 days. He apologized. He apologized because he had to stand in front of the teacher. Did he ever understand why the number mattered? I did not answer. After the call, I went to the bedroom and opened the bottom drawer of Ellen's dresser. Her clothes were gone except for one gray cardigan Claire liked to wear when she visited. Beneath it lay a narrow cedar box of family papers. I was not looking for evidence. I wanted the sound of Ellen's handwriting, the way her letters leaned slightly forward. I found a birthday card she had written to Colin when he turned 35. You are capable of building a good life, she had written. Do not confuse being trusted with being entitled. Trust is something you carry for other people, not something you spend because they love you. I sat on the edge of the bed and read it until the words blurred. Ellen had not hidden a secret deed or a fortune. She had left a warning in plain language, and like most plain warnings, it had been easier to admire than obey. Friday's board meeting was held in our main conference room. Dr. Patel had told me not to return to work for another 3 weeks, so I attended by video from home. Ruth sat beside me. Marcus managed exhibits on a second screen. Elaine and Thomas Reed were in the conference room. Peter appeared from North Carolina. Independent counsel, a woman named Joanne Ellis, chaired the meeting to avoid procedural arguments. Colin entered 8 minutes late with Serena and a new attorney, Andrew Voss. Howard was not present. Colin wore the navy suit Ellen had bought him for her funeral because he had arrived without one. Joanne began by confirming who had authority to attend. Serena objected when she was told she could remain only as a potential witness, not as an officer or shareholder. She moved to a chair along the wall. Colin stared at my image on the screen. You could have come in person. My surgeon advised against it. Convenient. Joanne interrupted. Medical commentary is not on the agenda. The agenda concerns officer authority, document authenticity, related party payments, and the proposed Crescent Meridian transaction. Andrew Voss requested postponement, arguing that Colin had not received enough time to review the allegations. Ruth handed him the preservation letters sent 5 days earlier and the documents his client had uploaded. He withdrew the request. We began with authority. Joanne read the bylaws. I remained chief executive. No board action had removed me. Colin's claim of acting president status depended on a memorandum he had issued himself. The false staff notice carried my typed name but no signature. Then Marcus displayed the letter of intent with my signature and the anesthesia timeline beside it. Mr. Colin Hale, Joanne said, do you contend that your father electronically signed this at 10:14 a.m. while undergoing cardiopulmonary bypass? Colin's attorney leaned toward him, but Colin answered first. No. My wife uploaded his signature based on prior verbal approval. Did your father authorize use of his signature image? He authorized the transaction in principle. That was not my question. Colin looked at the screen. Not specifically. Serena spoke from the wall. It was a non-binding document. Joanne turned. You will have an opportunity to answer when called. The altered succession election came next. Serena admitted uploading it but denied editing it. She said Howard had given her the file. Howard, through an email from his attorney, denied altering it and said Colin represented it as genuine. The 3 people who had toasted their partnership in Dubai were now passing the document around like a hot pan. Then Elaine showed the payment schedule. Colin argued that the Langford firms had provided legitimate introductions. Thomas asked for work product. There was none beyond a 14-page market report copied largely from public trade data. Marcus highlighted 2 paragraphs that still contained the name of an unrelated plumbing manufacturer, evidence that someone had reused a template without reading it. Peter laughed without humor. We paid $49,000 for a report about another company? We paid for access, Colin said. You paid your father-in-law, Elaine replied. He produced an offer. Using false ownership records for 2 hours, the facts accumulated. No single page created the betrayal. It was the way they fitted together. The late-night archive access, the altered election, the false resolution, the physician letter, the undisclosed family payments, the attempted credit line, the guardianship draft, the electronic signature applied during surgery, and the $5,800 resort charge made from a phone Colin had promised to remove from my account. At noon, Joanne called a short recess. I walked slowly from the kitchen to the back porch. Rain had washed the dust from Ellen's tomato cages. The plants were tied with strips cut from one of her old pillowcases. She believed soft cloth was kinder to stems than plastic. Ruth followed me outside. How are you holding up? My chest hurts. Your chest has an excuse. The rest of me doesn't? She looked through the glass door at Colin's frozen image on the conference screen. The rest of you is watching a future disappear. That is allowed to hurt. If we remove him, he loses the work he actually did. Consequences do not erase contribution. Contribution does not purchase immunity. When the meeting resumed, Joanne asked Colin whether he wished to correct any earlier statement. He looked older than he had that morning. I believed Dad would agree once he understood the price, he said. I believed the succession documents reflected what he had promised for years. Howard said we needed enough proof to keep the buyer engaged. I did not intend to steal the company. What did you intend to do if your father refused? Joanne asked. His eyes moved to the guardianship petition displayed on the screen. Have the court determine whether he was acting rationally. Using a medical letter arranged through your wife's uncle before the surgery? I was told Dad was confused after he collapsed. I spoke for the first time in nearly an hour. Who told you? Colin looked at me. You kept asking where Mom was in recovery. The letter was written before recovery. He looked away. Joanne called for a vote on 4 resolutions. The first suspended Colin as operations director pending an independent forensic audit. The second revoked all transactional authority, he claimed. The third rejected the Crescent transaction and instructed Blue River to return the buyer's deposit. The fourth authorized disclosure to insurers, lenders, and law enforcement if counsel determined it was required. Peter voted yes. I voted yes. The Employee Trust's independent trustee, who had joined for the voting portion, voted yes. Colin was not a director and had no vote, though for years he had behaved as if inheritance had already cast one for him. The resolutions passed unanimously. Colin stood. "So that's it?" he said to my image. 30 years as your son, 19 years at the company, and you throw me out in one meeting? You are suspended, not erased. You called it law enforcement. The evidence will decide what it is called. You could have handled this inside the family. You took it outside the family when you involved a buyer, a title company, a bank, 2 law firms, and a doctor who never examined me. He looked as if he wanted to say something else. Instead, he closed his laptop and left the room. Serena followed without looking back. Suspending Colin did not produce relief. It produced paperwork. By Friday evening, our insurer had appointed a forensic accounting firm. Joanne retained a separate digital examiner so the company would not rely on Ruth's consultant alone. Elaine changed banking permissions with 2 officers present. Jeremy created read-only images of the servers. Thomas supervised an inventory count because no one knew whether the false asset schedule concealed missing equipment as well as false ownership. I spent the weekend learning how slowly a sternum heals. Every cough required a pillow against my chest. Showering exhausted me. The company I had built seemed to be opening cabinet after cabinet without me, but Ruth would not let me turn recovery into another form of control. "You appointed competent people," she said. "Let them be competent. I appointed my son, too. Then improve the procedure, not your blood pressure." On Sunday afternoon, Maya brought Claire to my house. Colin had agreed only after Claire refused to get into his car at the airport unless she could see me. I did not ask how loud the argument became. Claire arrived wearing the gray cardigan from Ellen's dresser. Maya must have given it to her months earlier. Claire stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at the walker, the medication organizer, and the fresh bandage above my shirt collar. "Dad said you fired him. The board suspended him while records are examined. Is that different?" "It may feel the same today. It is different because facts still matter." She sat in Ellen's chair before noticing which one it was. For a moment I wanted to tell her to move. Then I saw the cardigan sleeves covering half her hands, and the impulse passed. "Mom took my phone," she said. "She said I betrayed them. Your parents decide the rules for your phone. Do you think I betrayed them? No. You asked me a question and sent photographs you believed I should see. But from now on, adults will gather evidence. You do not need to carry it." Her eyes filled. "Everyone was celebrating, and I knew you were alone in surgery. Grandma Denise said the trip had been such a blessing because it gave Dad something good to focus on. Then Mom used your name at dinner like you had sent us there." I reached across the table, slowly because of the incision, and placed my hand over hers. "You are allowed to love your parents and know they did something wrong. Do you still love Dad?" The easy answer was yes. Easy answers can be dishonest even when the word itself is true. "I love the boy he was, the man he has sometimes been, and the son he is right now," I said. "Those are not 3 different people. Loving all of him means I cannot pretend the last part did not happen." "Will he go to jail?" "I do not know. That will not be my decision." "Mom says you want that." "I want the truth recorded and the damage stopped. Other people decide what the law requires." Maya watched from the counter. Later, after Claire went upstairs to find an old photo album, Maya said, "You did not promise her everything would be fine. It would have been a lie. Most families call it reassurance. That may be how we got here." Claire stayed for dinner. Cal brought meatloaf, and Ruth arrived with a stack of documents she claimed were less dangerous than my cooking. We ate at the kitchen table. No one used the word transaction. For 40 minutes, we were simply 4 adults and a girl talking about school, rain, and whether Cal's meatloaf contained enough salt to preserve it for winter. When Maya drove Claire home, she hugged me carefully. At the door, she whispered, "Dad used to be good." "He has done good things," I said. "That matters. So does this." On Monday, the digital examiner delivered his first report. The altered succession election had been created on Serena's tablet using a PDF editor licensed to Langford Meridian. The original draft had been downloaded from Haleflow's board archive through Colin's credentials. The signature image came from a supplier certificate I signed 2 years earlier. The false board resolution had been assembled the same way. More damaging was a recorded due diligence call Crescent had kept under its standard compliance policy. At the beginning, an automated voice announced that the call would be recorded. Every participant agreed. Colin, Serena, and Howard spoke with Nadia Rahman and 2 Crescent executives. The date was 9 days before my collapse. At minute 18, Nadia asked, "Will Mr. Martin Hale execute the property transfer personally?" Colin answered, "He will sign when the complete value is in front of him." Nadia said. That is not the same as current authorization. Howard interrupted. Martin's health is declining. Colin is successor under the family plan. We are formalizing documentation. At minute 26, Nadia asked what would happen if I refused. Serena said, he will not refuse once Colin has temporary control. If he becomes emotional, there are medical options to protect the company. Then Colin spoke. My father has delayed this for years. The surgery gives us a window to put the structure in place without him disrupting every step. Once the deposit and financing are locked, he will see there is no rational alternative. The surgery gives us a window. He said it before my collapse because the bypass had originally been scheduled for the following month. I had known one artery was narrowed and expected a planned procedure. The parking lot episode moved the schedule forward. Colin and the Langfords had built their timetable around the period they expected me to be weak, medicated, and absent. The trip to Dubai was not an unfortunate overlap with my medical emergency. It was timed to it. I listened to the sentence 3 times. Ruth paused the recording. You do not need to hear the rest today. I need to know whether he objected when Serena said medical options. He did not. Near the end, Colin asked Crescent to accelerate the deposit so family resistance could be resolved before my recovery. Nadia refused. She required verified title and board approval. That caution was why the $300,000 had remained protected in escrow instead of entering Langford Meridian's account. The recording removed the explanation that they had panicked after I collapsed. They had planned to exploit the surgery. My emergency merely made their window arrive early. Ruth sent the recording to independent board counsel. Joanne notified our insurer and advised that the matter had crossed from internal governance into suspected financial crime. She did not ask my permission to follow the company's legal obligations. I appreciated that more than I could say. The card issuer finished its investigation that Wednesday. Saffron Crown provided a receipt showing the $5,800 paid for a 2-night villa upgrade and a private terrace dining package. Colin had signed the receipt. Beside his signature he wrote, authorized by cardholder/father, Martin Hale. The resort had also copied his passport and the mobile wallet record. The bank reversed the charge and rebilled the merchant, which then charged the deposit card Serena had provided at check-in. 3 days later, she sent me a message. You made my parents' account overdraw while we were still traveling. Whatever happens with the company, Claire will remember that you chose punishment over family. I forwarded it to Ruth and did not answer. My silence was not a strategy. It was a boundary. I had spent years believing every accusation deserved a response, as if a well-constructed sentence could make another person approach truth honestly. Some sentences are invitations into rooms where the floor has already been removed. The forensic audit took 5 weeks. During that time, I returned to the company in stages. At first, I worked 2 hours from a small office on the ground floor because stairs were forbidden. Employees came by one at a time. Some brought cards, some brought questions. A machinist named Luis asked whether the company would close. A purchasing clerk asked whether her retirement contributions were safe. Jeremy apologized for resetting Colin's permissions. Thomas told me 3 good engineers had received recruiting calls after rumors of a sale. I did not tell anyone Colin was evil. I said the proposed transaction had not been authorized, the company was operating normally, and an independent review was underway. When employees asked whether Colin would return, I said I did not know. Facts were slower than gossip, but they did not require maintenance once established. Elaine found the first major accounting discrepancy in travel expenses. Colin had charged $18,430 in airline tickets to a corporate card, classifying the Dubai trip as market development. The passengers were Colin, Serena, Claire, their 12-year-old son Ben, Howard, Denise, and Trent. Only Colin was an employee. The trip had been approved in the system by a temporary user account created under my name. Jeremy traced that account to Colin's laptop. There were also $27,600 in legal and document service expenses, $49,350 paid to Langford entities, and $33,200 in executive vehicle allowances that financed the lease on Howard's SUV. The total identified unauthorized or undisclosed related party spending reached $128,580. That number did not include the $920,000 fee because the sale never closed. It did not include the $2.4 million credit line because the bank refused to fund it. It did not include the $300,000 deposit because Crescent got it back. Prevented loss can look small on a ledger because the worst numbers never arrive. The audit also found that Haleflow was not in financial distress. Colin had told Crescent we needed an urgent capital infusion to replace equipment and meet orders. In reality, our cash position was strong. He created the appearance of urgency by delaying collections reports and moving $210,000 into a reserve account the board did not see in its monthly package. The money remained ours, but the concealed transfer made operations look strained. Why would he make the company look weaker to a buyer? I asked Elaine. To justify the credit line and your removal, she said, or because Howard told him a rescue story would move faster than a succession story. The email archive answered that question. Howard had written to Colin, "Your father's strongest weapon is time. If everyone believes delay threatens payroll and contracts, his caution becomes negligence. We do not need to defeat his ownership argument first. We need to make waiting look impossible." Colin replied, "Understood. I can compress cash on paper without missing obligations." That was the moment I stopped telling myself he had merely followed Serena and Howard. They influenced him. They praised his resentment and offered him a faster inheritance. But he understood the numbers he was changing. He used skills I had taught him to manufacture pressure against me. Ruth asked what outcome I wanted from the company. "I want the money returned, the false documents withdrawn, and Colin away from authority." "Temporarily or permanently?" I looked through the conference room glass at the production floor. Colin's first summer job had been sweeping those aisles. When he was 14, he designed a rack for testing fittings and insisted we pay him the same small royalty we paid an adult employee for an improvement. Ellen supported him. The rack design remained in use for 12 years. "Permanently," I said. It was not the angriest answer. It was the one that remained after anger had gone to sleep. We offered Colin a civil resolution before filing suit. He would resign all positions, certify destruction or return of confidential data, repay the $128,580 with the other responsible parties, and sell his 24% interest. The share price would be set by an independent valuation, not discounted as punishment, but his portion of restitution and investigation costs would be offset. The employee trust would have first opportunity to buy half the shares. The company could redeem the rest over 5 years so the purchase would not endanger jobs. In return, the company would settle its civil claims. We could not promise that prosecutors, insurers, the bank, or Crescent would take no action. Colin rejected the offer within 2 hours. His attorney's letter accused me of using a health crisis to force a below-market buyout. It claimed the related party expenses were authorized business development costs and that the documents reflected an oral succession plan. It demanded reinstatement, payment of his salary, and immediate negotiation with Crescent. The next morning, Serena posted a long statement in a private family group. She said Colin had devoted his life to an ungrateful father who became paranoid after surgery. She wrote that I had stranded her parents financially in a foreign country over a temporary hotel charge and manipulated Claire into spying on them. She asked relatives to pray that pride would not destroy what should have been Colin's legacy. Several relatives called me. I did not join the group argument. I sent each caller the same 3 sentences. I did not authorize the resort charge, a company sale, or use of my signature. Independent records show documents were created while I was under anesthesia. The company matter is being handled through counsel, and I will not discuss Claire. My cousin Raymond said, "That sounds cold." It is accurate. Colin says you promised him the business. I promised him an opportunity to earn leadership. I did not promise him my signature. Can't you forgive one bad decision? Which one? Raymond did not answer. Within a week, most calls stopped. Serena's statement required people to believe that a paranoid man had somehow arranged matching bank, hospital, server, escrow, and recording records. Sympathy could stretch. It could not carry all that weight. The State Financial Crimes Unit contacted us in the 7th week. Blue River's compliance officer had filed a report about the forged ownership documents and attempted property transaction. The bank filed a separate report concerning the proposed credit line and false collateral authority. Our insurer referred the altered board resolution. Detective Carla Ruiz interviewed me at Ruth's office. She did not ask whether I wanted my son arrested. She asked dates, permissions, ownership, and statements. She asked whether Colin had ever been authorized to sign my name. "No," I said. "Did you tell him he would inherit your shares?" I told him I hoped he would lead the company one day if he earned the board's trust and if we completed a succession plan. Could he reasonably believe he already owned them? No. He received shareholder statements every quarter. They listed 24%. Do you believe his wife controlled him? I thought of Serena at my kitchen table, sliding a confirmation toward a man 4 days out of surgery. I thought of Colin telling Crescent he could compress cash on paper. I believe they encouraged one another, I said. He understood the company. She understood her family. Neither understanding excused the other. Detective Ruiz nodded and moved to the next question. Howard's motive became clearer during the investigation. His last development project had failed. A personal loan of $610,000 came due 3 weeks after the planned Hailflow closing. He had pledged his house and Denise's retirement account. The $920,000 advisory fee would have saved both and left enough to pay Serena and Trent $75,000 each. Bank messages showed Serena knew the deadline. She had written, "Once Hale closes, Dad is safe and Colin finally gets what Martin has withheld." Colin responded, "Dad will forgive the process when he sees the result." That sentence stayed with me. He had built his plan on my forgiveness the way a developer builds on borrowed land. He counted it as an asset before asking whether it was available. 3 months after the Dubai charge, a grand jury returned charges against Colin, Serena, and Howard related to forged business records, attempted fraudulent transfer, and the credit application. I learned from Ruth before the news became public. There were no television cameras, no dramatic arrest in a boardroom. Each appeared with counsel and was processed under the same fluorescent lights as everyone else. Denise and Trent were not charged. The investigation found they knew the vacation was being subsidized but did not know about the forged documents. Dr. Philip Langford avoided a criminal charge, but the medical board opened a disciplinary case over his letter. Gerald Wilkes provided his file and became a witness. When Ruth told me, I walked to the workshop behind my house and sat on a stool Ellen had painted red. The place smelled of cedar and machine oil. On the wall hung Colin's first wooden toolbox, built at age 10 with one side slightly crooked. I did not feel victorious. I felt the way I had felt after identifying a cracked pressure housing in a hospital order years earlier. We had prevented a failure, but someone still had to explain how the crack entered the metal. The charges changed the civil negotiations. Colin's new criminal attorney advised him that repeating claims contradicted by recorded evidence would not improve his position. Serena retained separate counsel. Howard hired a lawyer known for taking cases to trial and began telling anyone who would listen that he had only introduced a buyer. For the first time since Dubai, Colin asked to meet me without Serena. Ruth arranged it in a private room at her office. She sat at the far end of the table with Colin's attorneys. I brought a small pillow for my chest, though by then I could move without holding it constantly. Colin entered carrying the same leather portfolio he had used at board meetings for years. He placed it on the floor instead of the table. "You look better," he said. "I am walking 2 miles a day. Claire said you planted tomatoes." "Cal planted them. I supervise with unreasonable confidence." For a moment, we almost smiled. Then Colin's lawyer opened a folder, and the room returned to what we had made of it. Colin was prepared to accept the company's original civil terms with modifications. He would resign, sell his shares at an independent value, repay his portion of unauthorized expenses, and waive any claim to the $920,000 fee. He wanted the company to describe his departure publicly as a family succession dispute rather than misconduct. He also wanted me to write, "Prosecutors asking for leniency." "I will not misdescribe the records," I said. "I will tell the truth if a court asks about your history, including the good parts. You could say this should stay civil. 3 institutions reported it without my direction. But you are the victim they care about. Hailflow is a victim. The employee trust is a victim. The bank and buyer received false documents. My name is not the only one on this." He rubbed the edge of the table with his thumb, the same motion he made as a teenager when trying to decide whether to tell the whole truth. "I did not think of it as forgery," he said. "Not at first." Ruth did not interrupt. "Howard said the old succession draft proved intent. He said using the signature only preserved the deal until you could ratify it. Serena said you would never let me act unless I forced the decision. I told myself the documents were temporary." "When did you know?" I asked. "Know what? When did you know you were not preserving my decision but replacing it?" His eyes moved to the portfolio on the floor. "When Crescent asked what would happen if you refused," he said. "I knew then. That was before my collapse, yes." "And you continued?" "Yes." The word was almost inaudible, but it was the first clean answer he had given me. "Why use my personal card?" I asked. He seemed surprised that the smallest item had returned. "The hotel froze Serena's debit card because of the deposit amount. Howard's cards were near their limits. My corporate card had already paid the flights, and I was afraid another large charge would trigger Elaine's review. Your card was in my phone. You could have called me. You would have said no. That is what permission is for. He nodded once. When the charge went through, what did you think? That I had fixed the immediate problem. Not that you had stolen from your father in a hospital? His face tightened. I planned to repay it. From the advisory fee, yes. Which came from selling property I had not agreed to sell, yes. Ruth shifted slightly, but she did not speak. I had imagined this conversation during cardiac rehabilitation. In some versions, Colin apologized with such clarity that I forgave him immediately. In others, I stood and delivered a speech that made every lawyer silent. Real accountability did not arrive with music. It sat under fluorescent lights and answered yes because all the other answers had collapsed. I was not clear enough about succession, I said. I told you the company would be yours someday, then delayed the plan. That was unfair. I made work and inheritance sound like the same thing. Colin looked up. But uncertainty did not authorize you to manufacture certainty, I continued. My failure to set a date did not make my ownership temporary. Your work earned compensation, shares, and consideration. It did not earn my identity. What do you want me to say? Nothing prepared for me. Tell the complete truth where it is required. Pay what you owe. Stop asking Claire to choose which version of reality keeps your home comfortable. Then build whatever life remains without assuming I will finance the foundation. He swallowed. Do you hate me? No. Do you forgive me? Not today. He flinched as if no had been easier. I may forgive you someday, I said. That will not restore you to the company, return your shares, or erase the court record. Forgiveness is not an executive position. His attorney looked down. Ruth's expression did not change, but later she told me that was the sentence Colin finally heard. We signed a framework for the civil settlement that afternoon. Final valuation took another month. 2 independent appraisers examined Hailflow's earnings, customer concentration, equipment, liabilities, and market prospects. They valued Colin's 24% interest at $2.18 million after applying an appropriate minority interest adjustment. No one reduced the value to punish him. From that amount, $62,400 was withheld for his allocated share of restitution, $118,000 for agreed investigation and legal costs, and another $200,000 went into escrow pending insurance and tax adjustments. The employee trust purchased 12% with a bank loan supported by company distributions. Hailflow redeemed the remaining 12% through scheduled payments over 5 years. Colin did not leave penniless. Accountability did not require pretending 19 years of legitimate work had no value. He left with substantially less control and less money than he expected, but with enough to begin again after meeting his obligations. Howard refused to join the settlement. He claimed every dollar paid to his companies was earned, and that Colin had misrepresented ownership. His own emails contradicted him. The bank called his personal loan. He sold the house before foreclosure and entered bankruptcy. Denise moved into a rental near her sister. Those consequences came from debts he had created long before my surgery. I did not cause them by refusing to sell my land. Serena settled the company's civil claims separately. She repaid $41,000 from her share of marital savings, surrendered all copies of our records, and admitted uploading signature images without authorization. She and Colin separated 6 months after the trip. I never asked Claire for details. Children should not become press secretaries for their parents' marriage. The criminal cases took longer. Howard insisted on a trial until a judge ruled the Crescent recording admissible. He then pleaded guilty to 2 counts involving forged records and attempted theft by deception. Because of the planned amount, his role in organizing the entities, and his refusal to accept responsibility until the eve of trial, he received a custodial sentence. I learned the number, 3 years, from a newspaper article and did not save the clipping. Serena pleaded guilty to a lesser facilitation charge, received probation, community service, and restitution obligations, and lost the bookkeeping certification she had used to market herself to small businesses. Her attorney emphasized that she acted under family pressure. The prosecutor emphasized that she operated the tablet. Both statements could be true. Colin pleaded guilty to 1 felony count of falsifying a business record and 1 count related to the credit application. His cooperation, restitution, lack of prior record, and the company's civil settlement mattered. So did the planning and the effort to use my health against me. The judge sentenced him to 10 months of home incarceration, followed by supervised probation, barred him from fiduciary roles during that period, and required financial ethics service through a court-approved program. At sentencing, I submitted a statement but did not ask for a specific punishment. I wrote that Colin had been a loving father at many moments, a productive employee for many years, and a son I still loved. I also wrote that he used trust accumulated over decades as a tool for taking authority he knew he did not possess. I described waking from surgery to learn that the temporary weakness of my body had been entered into someone else's timetable. I asked the court to recognize both his capacity for good and the deliberate nature of the harm. The judge read part of my statement aloud. She said family trust could explain access but not excuse abuse of that access. Colin turned toward me before he was led from the courtroom. Home incarceration meant he would leave with his attorney, not in handcuffs. Still, he looked frightened. I nodded once. He nodded back. That was all. At Haleflow, the first 6 months after his departure were less dramatic and more difficult than outsiders imagined. Colin had managed real relationships. Customers called him. Vendors trusted his forecasts. 2 supervisors had depended on him for quick decisions. Removing wrongdoing did not automatically replace competence. Thomas Reed became interim operations director. Elaine took a seat on the board. We formed a succession committee that included the employee trust representative and 2 outside advisors. Every officer's authority was written, limited, and reviewed annually. Related party vendors required disclosure and approval regardless of amount. Electronic signatures needed a live confirmation for transactions above a threshold. No one person could change administrative access and approve a payment in the same system. I had once resisted procedures because I believed trust made them unnecessary. Then Colin exploited that belief. The lesson was not that trust was foolish. It was that good structures protect trustworthy people from suspicion and dishonest people from opportunity. We considered selling the company properly. 3 buyers expressed interest after word of the failed transaction spread through the industry. 1 offered more than Crescent. I did not reject them because Ellen's ghost lived in the testing lab. I rejected them because the employee trust and board concluded that remaining independent produced better long-term value. For the first time, the decision did not depend only on me. 9 months after surgery, I stepped down as chief executive. Thomas received the permanent appointment after an outside search that included 4 candidates. He was not family. That fact neither qualified nor disqualified him. At the company meeting, I stood on the production floor where I had collapsed and spoke for 12 minutes. I thanked employees, described the new governance plan, and said ownership was a responsibility measured by what survived the owner. I did not mention Dubai. Everyone already knew enough. Elaine became board chair the following year. I retained a smaller share and 1 board seat, then began transferring additional shares to the employee trust under a documented schedule. ME, Properties signed a 15-year lease with protections against using the land as collateral without unanimous approval. Ellen's structure remained, not as a shrine, but as a tool doing the work we designed it to do. I also revised my estate plan. That decision attracted more opinions than the sale of the company. Cousins who had never read our shareholder agreement suddenly warned me not to punish Colin from the grave. Serena's family assumed I would disinherit him. Colin himself did not ask, which I took as progress. Ruth and I spent 3 mornings reviewing each asset, obligation, and promise. The old will left most of my estate to Colin, with smaller education trusts for Claire and Ben. It had been written when Ellen was alive, and we expected Colin to operate Haleflow. If I died under that plan, he could regain through inheritance much of the influence the board had lawfully removed. "Do you want to disinherit him?" Ruth asked. "No." "Why not?" "Because I am not revising this to create one last ambush. He is my son. He will receive something defined, not control disguised as grief." We created a fixed trust for Colin that could not hold Haleflow voting shares or serve as collateral for his business debts. It would distribute modest amounts over time after my death, subject to any unpaid restitution. Claire's and Ben's education trusts remained equal and independent of their relationships with me. I directed my remaining Haleflow shares to the employee trust under a valuation formula, with enough insurance and liquid assets to prevent a forced sale. ME, Properties would transfer to a separate stewardship trust whose sole purpose was to lease the land fairly, maintain it, and offer the operating company a purchase option only after employee trust approval. No beneficiary could sell the property to an outside developer simply because the market rose. "This is more complicated than leaving everything to your son," Ruth said. "So was building it. Complexity can fail too." Then write the review requirement. We required independent review every 5 years. The plan did not try to control the company for a century from a cemetery. It created time for the people doing the work to decide without a family member arriving with an old promise. When the documents were complete, I invited Colin to Ruth's office and told him the parts that affected him. I was not required to disclose my will, but secrecy had helped resentment grow before. He listened without interrupting. "So Claire and Ben get more than I do," he said. "Their trusts are for education and early adulthood. Yours is larger in total dollars, but none of you receives voting control. The employees get the company. They will have the right to buy the shares under a formula. Ownership will follow the work and the obligations." He looked at Ruth. "Was this her idea?" "It is mine," I said. Ruth made it less likely to collapse. "What if I change?" "I hope you do." "Then why make it permanent?" "Because your recovery should not depend on receiving the thing you tried to take, and the company should not become the test of whether I love you again." He sat with that for a while. "Would Mom have done this?" he asked. There was no honest way to answer for a dead woman in a room full of living consequences. "Your mother would have insisted on accurate documents," I said. "Beyond that, neither of us gets to use her as a vote." He nodded. "Thank you for telling me." It was the only appropriate response, and he gave it without asking me to change a number. The Employee Trust held its first annual meeting after the restructuring in the cafeteria. Folding chairs filled the room. A projection showed the trust's debt, share value, distribution policy, and voting rights. Elaine explained each line in language the newest shipping clerk could understand. Luis, the machinist who had asked whether the company would close, raised his hand. "Mr. Hale, are we supposed to feel like you gave us something?" The room became quiet. "No," I said. "The trust is buying shares and taking risk. You should feel responsible for understanding what you own. But you could have sold for more cash, possibly. Then why didn't you?" I looked at the 38 people who had spent months wondering whether a family fight would remove their income. Because the highest offer is not always the best transaction. And because I finally learned succession is not a sentence you repeat to one child. It is a process everyone affected should be able to see. Thomas added that no employee was required to call the company a family. "Families can ask for loyalty without explaining the books," he said. "This is a workplace with contracts, pay, rights, and responsibilities. If we care about one another too, good. But care does not replace governance." Elaine smiled at that. We added the sentence to the trust's orientation materials. After the meeting, Jeremy approached me near the coffee machine. "I keep thinking about the day Colin told me to delete Elaine's account," he said. "If I had done it, would all the evidence have disappeared?" "No. The archive had backups. But I didn't know that. You asked for written authority. That was the right instinct. I almost did it because he sounded certain. Certainty is not a permission level." He wrote that sentence on a sticky note and put it above his monitor. Months later, I saw it there, curled at the edges. The company's new procedures were not monuments to Colin's failure. They were acknowledgments that decent people get tired, intimidated, hurried, and confused. A strong system gives them a place to stand while they ask one more question. That principle reached beyond the company. I removed Colin from every dormant card, streaming account, property code, medical portal, and shared password I could find. I named Ruth's younger partner as financial agent and Maya as alternate healthcare contact, with Colin able to receive medical updates but not direct access to my accounts. I placed verbal passwords with the bank and title office. I enrolled in property record alerts. None of those steps felt loving. None felt hateful either. They felt like locking the door at night. Not because every person outside was dangerous, but because a door is supposed to open from the side where permission lives. My personal recovery moved at a less organized pace. Cardiac rehabilitation taught me to walk on a treadmill while a television showed home renovation programs with the sound off. I learned to measure salt, take pills at the same time, and accept that a nap was not a moral failure. Cal and I planted too many tomatoes. Ruth refused every bag I offered her until I began leaving them in her car. The $5,800 returned to my account after the dispute. For a week, I thought about giving exactly that amount to a charity so the number would become something clean. Then I realized I was still allowing Colin's act to decide what the money meant. I left it in the account. Returned money was not a prize or a symbol. It was mine, restored. Claire visited every other Sunday when her parents' schedule allowed. Ben came less often. At 12, he responded to conflict by putting headphones over it. I did not force conversation. We built a small radio kit in the workshop, and for 3 visits he said almost nothing beyond which wire he needed. On the 4th, while soldering a connection, he asked, "Did Dad steal your whole company?" "No," I said. "He tried to use papers that were not true to control a decision." Mom says Grandpa Howard thought it was already Dad's. People can think a thing should happen and still know it has not happened. Are you going to take our house? I set down the soldering iron. No. Your home belongs to your parents and their bank. The company settlement does not take it. You and Claire will have food, school, and a safe place to live. The adults are responsible for arranging that. He nodded and returned to the radio. Later I learned he had overheard Serena telling Colin that restitution might ruin them. They sold a vacation property they had purchased with my help and refinanced their house. They did not become poor. They became unable to live as if future family assets were already available. Claire wanted more explanation than Ben. She read a news story about the guilty pleas and asked why my statement said Colin had been a good father. Because he has been at times, I said. But he lied. Both are true. Doesn't saying the good part let him avoid the bad part? Only if we use it that way. A complete truth is not a defense. It is a complete truth. She considered that. Mom says complete truth is just another phrase lawyers use. Sometimes lawyers use good phrases. Do you trust Dad now? I trust him to be your father. I do not trust him with my money or company. Trust can be specific. That idea seemed to help her. It helped me too. During home incarceration, Colin could work remotely in a non-financial role approved by his supervisor. He found a job with a logistics company in Indiana, analyzing warehouse schedules. The position paid less than hail flow and gave him no signing authority. He did well. His supervisor later told the court he was careful, punctual, and unusually attentive to approval limits. I did not know whether to laugh or grieve when Ruth told me. Colin wrote letters every month. The first 3 were arguments shaped like apologies. He said Howard had manipulated him. He said Serena feared losing her parents' home. He said my delays made him desperate. Each letter ended with, "I am sorry," but the pages before it arranged the blame so carefully that the apology had nowhere to stand. I replied once, "I have read your letters. I will answer when you can describe your choices without using another person as the subject of every sentence." The 4th letter was 6 lines. I used your card because I believed I could replace the money before you made me answer for it. I used your signature because I believed the result would make the method disappear. I used your surgery because I knew you would say no if you were strong enough to stop me. Howard encouraged me, Serena helped me, and I chose it. I am sorry. I placed that letter in the cedar box with Ellen's card. I did not answer for 2 weeks. Then I wrote, "This is the first letter that gives us something true to stand on. Keep standing there." Forgiveness did not arrive that day. Trust certainly did not. But contempt began to loosen, and I was grateful. Contempt can feel like protection while quietly requiring the person who hurt you to remain present in every room. A year after the hospital, Colin asked to meet at a public park. His home confinement had ended, though probation continued. Ruth said the legal matters no longer required supervised contact. I asked Claire's therapist whether seeing us together would burden her. The therapist said that depended on whether we used the meeting to force reconciliation. I promised we would not. We met on a bench near a pond where Colin had learned to ride a bicycle. He arrived early. His hair had more gray than I remembered. Without the company title and the expensive suit, he looked not diminished but unarmored. For several minutes, we watched 2 geese argue over a piece of bread. "How is your heart?" he asked. "More reliable than my knees." Elaine sent the annual report. The company had a good year. She was required to send it while your redemption payments continue. I know. He took a small plastic card from his pocket. It was not my old card. The bank had destroyed that account number. It was a printout from his digital wallet showing the token ending in 4419 had been deleted, with the removal date. "I should have done this in Cincinnati," he said. "Yes." He handed me the printout. I folded it once and returned it. "Keep it," I said. "You need the reminder more than I do." He put it away. "I have been trying to understand why I thought repayment made permission unnecessary," he said. "In my head, you always had more. More money, more time, more authority. Taking a little felt temporary. The amount was not the boundary. I know that now." "Do you?" He watched the pond. "I knew you would pay for the hotel if I could make the argument afterward. You had done it before. With the roof, Claire's school trip, Serena's car repair. I started treating your first no as the beginning of negotiation. That, too, contained truth I had to own. I had often said no, endured days of pressure, then paid to restore peace. Each time, I told myself I was helping. I had trained everyone, including myself, to believe my boundaries expired under discomfort. I taught you that persistence could access my wallet, I said. I did not teach you to falsify consent. No, you didn't. I will not pay expenses for you or Serena again. I will give birthday gifts to Claire and Ben. I will contribute directly to education accounts under terms already established. There will be no emergency loans, no guarantees, and no early inheritance. I didn't ask. I am telling you so neither of us has to wonder. He nodded. Can I come to the house sometime? Not yet. His face tightened, but he did not argue. Can we meet here again? Yes. We agreed on the first Saturday of the next month. No grand promises, no embrace for a photograph, a date, a place, and a boundary each of us understood. As we stood, Colin said, I am glad you did not die. The sentence was so plain that it nearly broke me. So am I said. He walked toward his car. I remained by the pond until my breathing settled. I had once believed reconciliation meant returning to the moment before harm. Age had taught me there was no such return. A repaired bone records the break. A rebuilt machine carries a new serial entry. A relationship that survives betrayal does not become innocent again. It becomes honest, or it becomes nothing. 2 years after the Dubai trip, Claire graduated from high school. Colin and Serena sat on opposite sides of the auditorium. I sat with Maya and Ben. When Claire crossed the stage, all of us stood. At the reception, Colin approached with 2 paper cups of lemonade. He offered me one. I bought this with my own card, he said. It was a poor joke and an honest one. I took the cup. Serena came over later. We had not spoken directly since the settlement. Probation had ended, but the distance between us remained. Martin, she said, Claire wants one photograph with everyone. Then we should give her one. We stood in a row beneath a maple tree. Serena, Ben, Colin, Claire, Maya, and me. No one pretended the arrangement meant we were restored. It meant a young woman had graduated and the adults could stand still for 30 seconds without asking her to edit the past. Afterward, Serena said quietly, I blamed you for what happened to my parents. I know. My father made his choices. Yes. So did I. Yes. She waited, perhaps hoping for more. I was not cruel, but I did not rescue her from the silence. I am sorry, she said. I believe you are sorry. It was not forgiveness. It was recognition. That was enough for the day. Claire enrolled at the University of Kentucky to study biomedical engineering. She chose the field without encouragement from me, though Colin joked that pressure valves had entered the family blood. I paid the amount Ellen and I had placed in her education trust years earlier. I did not add conditions about loyalty, majors, or where she spent holidays. Ben kept the radio we built. He later sent me a recording of an overseas station he caught late at night. Neither of us mentioned that the signal came from the Middle East. My life grew quieter in ways I had once feared. I went to the company 2 days a week, then 1. I joined a woodworking group at the community center and made boxes that were more precise than beautiful. Cal and I walked before breakfast. Ruth retired from full-time practice but continued to send me invoices for tomatoes. I finally let Claire take Ellen's gray cardigan to college. The empty dresser drawer bothered me for a week. Then I used it for clean workshop cloths. One autumn evening, I sat alone at the kitchen table reviewing nothing more important than a seed catalog. Ellen's chair stood across from me. For years, I had treated that chair as evidence that the best part of my life had ended. That evening, I moved it closer to the window so the fabric would catch the last light. My phone vibrated. For an instant, my body remembered the hospital alert, the antiseptic, the rain, the paper gown, and Colin's voice saying I could do nothing from a hospital bed. The new message was from him. First Saturday still good? I can bring coffee. I wrote back, 10 o'clock, bring your own card. He responded with a single word, understood. I smiled, but I did not confuse the smile with a guarantee. The $5,800 charge had been returned long ago. The company remained independent. The employees kept their jobs. The land Ellen and I protected was still beneath the buildings, carrying every machine, desk, and person above it without needing anyone to applaud the foundation. Colin was still my son. He was not my successor, my officer, my authorized user, or the future owner of everything I had built. Those distinctions did not weaken love. They gave love a shape that could no longer be used as a blank signature. At 74, I understood something I should have learned much earlier. Peace purchased by surrendering every boundary is not peace. It is a recurring charge made by people who expect the account to stay open. I had closed that account. What remained was quieter, slower, and true. For the first time in years, that truth felt like enough.